All right, we are live on the internet on a Friday afternoon when, until this week, I would be appearing on this guy's show. But forces beyond our control have landed us in the internet world where we're going to talk some curling today. Kris Abbott from Coolbet, joined by Andrew Paterson, more well-known to all of you, especially in Manitoba, as Hustler. How you doing, my friend?
Dude, I am well. It is great to talk to you again on our usual Friday chat. And despite a pretty crazy week, 10 days, feeling good. Had great response from everyone. Exciting things coming up. And for those of us that like to throw down on Coolbet and especially love curling, it is on. The bubble is packed, and we've got the biggest field in Scotties tournament history. And honestly, Kris, as we'll talk about, I don't want to say the most wide open field because I think it is pretty top heavy. And as we'll talk about, there are some clear favorites, but the amount of intrigue going into this event with essentially no play in the sport for the better part of the last 6-7 months. I don't really know what to expect, but I can't wait for the first stone to be thrown tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. It is a super exciting time. And hey, Winnipeg Radio's loss is our gain here in the betting industry, especially at Coolbet. We're going to talk about betting curling today, which is not something that is usually kind of on the forefront of the sports gambler's mind. Huss, what are ways people bet curling? What kind of markets are available for the Scotties this week?
You know what? Ever since the lines came out, I guess last week, and especially here in maybe the curling hotbed of the world in Manitoba, and we'll talk about a lot of Manitobans in this event, there's been a lot of excitement about it. And, originally, and we'll talk about it, we've got the tournament odds, who we think will win the whole thing. There are futures on both of the two groups as all the teams are split up into two groups in the initial round robin. And then we get into the draws. And already right now on Coolbet, we've got the 4 matches tonight in draw 1 and odds for all 12 matches tomorrow, 3 draws of 4 matches each. And for those matches, you've got the straight money line bet as to who's going to win. And something I'm excited to try, have never done before, spread betting and totals on these events. And, we've seen, I'd say maybe this is a generalization, but often, some maybe bigger scores on the women's side. We've seen numbers at around 12.5 for most of them. I'm really interested to see how, the first few days go, what the scoring is like and how that might adjust the lines, whether we see some very, big differences from match to match or whether there's pretty much a standard in and around 12.5 per. But yeah, we've got spreads, we've got totals, we've got money lines, and we can parlay a few of those things together as well on a big day like tomorrow. So it is on, and I know many of our cool bettors are going to be hurrying hard to their tablets to get some down before they get going tonight. And of course, if you do want to get futures, you better do that before they get into draw 1 tonight on Friday.
Yeah, that's right. Futures markets are going to close when draw 1 starts on Friday night. So it's really interesting what we've seen already with the early money coming in. Maybe no surprise. There's some big favorites. As you mentioned, the field is kind of top heavy. And until those teams kind of play each other, we will see some mismatches odds wise. We are seeing a lot of favorite parlays, and it's going to be curious to me to see how many upsets we get early on. As you alluded to, these teams haven't played. The ice is brand new. They don't have that touch, that feel yet. So I'm thinking we're going to see, missed shots from skips leading to steals, which is really going to affect the spread bets. Are we going to see those huge steals given up where, a team is drawing against 4 or 5 for 1? That's usually a gimme. Are we going to see like a bunch of multi-point ends that is going to kill the totals? So I think it's really, really going to be exciting for the first few days. And I do think, even though I work on the side of the book, I think that the players at a real betting advantage right now because we're all waiting to see what's going to happen.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's no doubt about it. We know what the history is, and we know the best teams that, in the world rankings, but we don't know how they're feeling coming in. We don't know how much they've been able to play or practice, which in most cases, from what I've been finding out, is not a lot. So I think the sprinkles might be a little lighter in the first couple days as, I think a lot of players sort of get a bit more of the landscape of how teams are looking. I will say this, especially at the top of this field, These are the most elite teams, not just in Canada, but really amongst the ones on the planet. I mean, you could throw the best in the world in this event, and it would just be a few more great teams in an already great field. So, I mean, it's not like this is new to them. They've been there before. They've done that. But honestly, especially in these first 3 days of the tournament, I think, probably the first 3 to 4 matches, how teams handle coming back together, being in the Scotties without fans, with incredible competition. A bad start could really put you behind the 8 ball, even to get into the playoffs. But as we know in curling, even if you just squeak into the playoffs, with the page system, it can be a much more onerous and long road to get to the top. So, there's a game tomorrow, which we'll talk about, my matchup of the day for Saturday, that could have massive implications on the group standings at the end. This is a matchup between 2 of the favorites. So we're going to learn a lot about this field, about the ice, about who seems ready to go and who, unfortunately is dealing with many of the roadblocks that have been put in front of all these teams as they look to get back onto the ice in this once-in-a-lifetime bubble for the Scotties with the expanded field.
I think you made an excellent point when you talked about the fact that it's such a hard tournament to win if you don't finish near the top of your group because of the page playoffs. With that, who do you think or who are your picks to win this event?
Well, listen, when you look at it, I mean, there's a real clear top 4, if you ask me. Carrie Einerson's the favorite at -180. That shows representing a Manitoba team representing Canada as the defending champions. And, I mean, they've been an elite team, one of the real super elites for, a number of years. But, lost in the final. And they finally got over that hump and became Canadian champions. And then, of course, ended up, that was right when coronavirus was sort of blowing up. World championships were canceled, and they've been in neutral waiting to do it all again. They're a clear favorite right now by the books at -180. And then when we talked about it on the Lock Shop on Friday with the early odds, came out, Homan and Jones were both 300. And then you had, to me, maybe the most interesting team in the field in Team Fleury, which we will see, which is another Manitoba team, Tracy Fleury, wildcard team. But Tracy Fleury is not competing in this event due to a family situation. She's out. So 2-time Canadian champion Chelsea Carey from Winnipeg had been competing in Alberta, has now come in to be the skip for the Fleury rink. Now, they had opened up at +315. And in the last 3 days, we've seen a ton of money come down to 2 of the greatest names in the history of Canadian curling, Rachel Homan and Jennifer Jones. Those numbers now, I mean, I think I just saw beforehand, Ontario and Homan's down to +245 and Jones is at +275. I still think Carrie Einerson is and should be the favorite, but it's hard to move that number very much. I think there's a lot of reasons why maybe to look at some of the others with it being such a tough field to win, laying such a short number on the defending champions with such a wide open field and so much that we don't know about the situation. As far as a pre-tournament bet, I got in on the 3-1 at Jen Jones right away. And it comes down to this. I think Einerson, if everyone was even, I'm probably putting my money on Einerson, but I think that the value is there with Jen Jones. You want to talk about a team that has been there, done that. We overuse the term GOAT in sports radio as much the greatest of all time. But Jen Jones is that for Canadian curling. 6-time champion, Olympic champion, world champion. She has absolutely done it all. And I think there's something to be said for been there, done that, done it all. This is another thing that they're coming in. And again, it's a little bit different. It's different for everyone. But all things being equal, you put that group back out there with Caitlin Laws. Of course, there is a bit of a change. Lisa Weigel coming over from Homan's team, adding a little bit of intrigue and drama to it all. But I think Jones, I look at her like Tom Brady, and a lot of people, myself included, who can't stand Brady, realize that he's the best. He had 6 rings. We're in the middle of coronavirus. He comes back and gets a 7th. And looking at this field, I think there's a lot of reasons to think this could be one more magical run for Jen Jones. But to me, it really does come down to that top 4. And as far as value, I think maybe that Fleury rink, I should mention Chelsea Carey has 2 Canadian championships and won them both in her first year with new teams. This would be a similar situation. Why those other teams that win the championships don't stay together, that's someone else's conversation to have. But there is history that she's a shot maker. She can come in. The team she's joining is an elite team and deserves to be in that conversation. So it's interesting to see how that number has moved, maybe the most significant movement in all of the top four, with them going from 315 to 420 right now going in. But pre-tournament, I'm going to go with Jen Jones. History repeats itself. A 7th ring to go along with Tom Brady, the curling version of the GOAT, Jen Jones.
Well, I'm gonna play on your comparison of Jennifer Jones to Tom Brady, and the one big thing there is that Tom Brady is a little bit insufferable. Jen Jones, as you know, Coolbet is sponsor of Team John Epping, and Jennifer's husband, Brent Lang, is a member of that team. And I had the opportunity to spend some time with Jen, and she is just such a wonderful human being. And I think sometimes I said to her when I met her, I said, you've been on my TV for 100 years. I feel like I know you. And, but actually getting to talk to her and getting to know her, she is an awesome human being as well. Great mom. And that is also leaning into my play on Team Jennifer Jones. I want her to get that 7th. I think it's Jill Officer, and is it Colleen Jones or somebody else has 6th, and she would be the only one to come up with 7. And I'm a little bit of a heart play on Jennifer Jones, but how do you ever count her out? She is, I would say, the best female Canadian curler in history, right? Like, is there an argument for that right now?
No, I mean, there isn't. And, Colleen Jones did have all those records. Of course, Sandra Schmirler was an all-time great, and we lost her too early. But, over the last decade, Jen Jones got to that level and then went to another level. And this would just be another incredible chapter in the greatest curling career in women's curling history. And, thinking just off the top of my head, I think Canadian curling history as well. So
as soon as I said female curler, I stopped. I was waiting for you to finish so I could say her, Kevin Martin, who else, right? Like, they're the two best to do it, maybe ever.
Yeah. There's been those, the men's game has been interesting. You had the Furby rink that dominated for a while. And then, you had a number of groups here. Jeff Stoughton was top for a long time. Kevin Martin, of course. And Johnny Moe's been in on a few incredible teams. But for the women's side of things, the Jen Jones rink has just been a mainstay, really, for 20 years in the game, doing things that nobody else has done. And in a tournament like this where so much is unknown, one thing we do know is if Jen Jones has a shot at the end of the game to make it, you got a pretty good chance to win and cash your ticket.
And a great front end, and Caitlin Laws is decorated as well. Yeah, so they're going to be my play going in to the tournament.
What about the Lisa? Can we just quickly talk about the Lisa Weigel Revenge Tour? Because
it's so interesting because by all accounts it caught her a little off guard. From what I've seen of Lisa Weigel, she's absolutely a sweetheart. But I wonder if she doesn't have, a little bit of that revenge coming into this one. You got to think she does.
This is sports, and this is these women's livelihoods as well. And let's be real about this. I mean, I know they don't spend a lot of time talking about the drama of the game on TSN, but it's there. It's real. And when these teams go at it, that is going to be front and center, I think, on the minds of everybody watching from coast to coast. That's a really, really interesting dynamic. And, we're going to talk. And I mean, as a Manitoba guy, I'm going to give you, I think Einarson is going to be right there. But we cannot overlook Rachel Holman. I think there's a reason why Holman has had a lot of support at the book, going from 300 to the second favorite behind Einarson right now, and the biggest movement, that way so far this week. They have some unfinished business. That was the team we thought was maybe getting ready to follow in the footsteps of the Jones rink as the next all-time great. They hit the skids the last couple of years, and Carrie Einarson has been the one that's barged in. The matchup between those two in the group as well will be really, really interesting. And I think, it'll be surprising if maybe we don't have these top four teams in the playoffs when it's all said and done, because the talent level overall does drop off. There's a couple other teams that I think will be live going in, including the World Junior Champions, another one of the wildcard teams.
Yeah, absolutely. So let me finish the Holman conversation by saying her third, Emma Miskew, is a Coolbet athlete. Her and Ryan Fry, we sponsored their mixed doubles team. They actually sent me a broom. I meant to have it here for this segment, but I'll post a picture of it later. Yeah, they've got Miskew, Fry, and Abbott custom brooms made. So I was pretty happy about that.
Nice.
Yeah, very, very, very cool. I don't want to play too much into the Rachel Holman is very pregnant card, but that is a thing. You know, we saw Sandra Smirler, we saw Jen Jones compete in this event. You know, as very pregnant women, like I think she's like 7 months along. So, you know, I will see how that comes into effect. I think Laura Walker has a newborn actually in the bubble with her. So, I mean, these women, I mean, I love it because it just shows their strength. Like, show me a man that would be able to play 7 months pregnant. They'd be home on the couch, you know, crying and looking for the hot water bottle, or show me a man that's like, oh, let me also take care of my newborn while I'm doing this. It wouldn't happen, and that's why I love these women.
No, there'd be a team people to help them out. Yeah, listen, I will say this about Rachel Holman, and anyone that's watched her do her thing. The intensity, the stare, the focus, the concentration of Holman when she shoots in curling, she is about as focused an athlete as I think that I've seen. And if she's out there in the Scotties with the rock in her hand, in the hack with the final shot, 7 months pregnant, she will not even know that she's pregnant at the time. I mean, if she's out there, she'll be locked in. She's a stone cold killer when she's on right now. So
she is one of the best game faces in the entire sports world.
Yeah, for sure. Those eyes, that stare, it is intimidating. I just think that if she's there and she's competing, I think that, you know, she'll be able to give her best right now. I mean, that is what they're there for. And, you know, it was interesting to find out where she's at, you know, in this, and it's probably perfect timing. Have the child. It might impact the Worlds, although I don't think there even is Worlds right now this year.
No, they canceled it. Yeah,
exactly. But it would be a nice parting gift before going into labor and having the bid. Holman's team is legit. She's got the history, and I think that, let's face it, 7 months pregnant is 7 months pregnant. We don't know what that is. She says she's ready to go. I'll take her word for it. And I won't be fading Team Holman throughout the event because of what she's dealing with.
No, definitely not. And nor have the bettors early. Like we've seen a ton of action come in on Team Holman from Ontario. So we were talking about some of the best teams to ever do it. And one that we didn't talk about was the Brad Gushu team from Newfoundland. And they came on the map. They won the junior nationals. They won the junior worlds. And then they've been a force in the men's division for a long, long time. You've got a team coming out of Manitoba that nationally, maybe we don't know them well enough, but they could make some noise in this tournament. I'm not even sure. Is it Zacharias? Is that how we say her last name?
Yeah, Mackenzie Zacharias. They're curling out of Altona. She's a Winnipeg girl, I believe a student at the University of Manitoba. Last year at the Canadian Juniors, swept the table, clean sweep, 11-0, went to the World Championships and won. And, you know, in the past, junior teams weren't allowed into the Scotties, and that has changed. And obviously they're now making the step up to playing with the women. And in October, when you look back at, you know, what they were doing in those two events, I believe a finalist or finals in both, two very, very strong performances going up against, you know, these top teams in Canada in the world. 12-1 to win the event would be an incredible upset and a great, great Cinderella story. I do think there's some value on this team early on in the event, as a lot of people don't know the name, realize that, you know, maybe hear that they're juniors and think, well, they're going to go and take their lumps. They start off against Carrie Einerson. So, I mean, they're going up against the champs in the very first game. Even if they lose that, I think that, you know, with the experience that they've already had on the world stage, they'll learn a lot, and I think they'll be ready to perform the rest of the way. And I think this will be the team that maybe is off the radar that will be pushing to, you know, potentially get into the playoffs. And they're going to be a tough out for any team that they play, no matter how decorated they are.
And I'm looking for that opening game to be a key to one of my little long shot sprinkle bets. I've got them to win the group at plus 570. If they can pull an upset in the early draws, which is probably the best place to do it, they could be positioned pretty well to steal that that pool. So I'm going to put a little sprinkle on Mackenzie Zacharias' squad to be the darlings of this event and win their pool at plus 570.
Yeah, man, there you get. No, that's like maybe a good transition into the group bets because if you have got her at the 570, I'm going with Jones. Again, and what I found was interesting is that because of the in Group B, it's not as strong. You've got Einarson, you've got Holman, you've got Zacharias, Alberta, all in the other pool. I thought that the number actually might be a little shorter on Jones to win. I mean, Fleury is 420 to win the event and only plus 135. So, again, this is a little bit of value on Jones. As far as Einarson, I mean, I do think Einarson is the class of that group and really of the event. And, picking against her maybe is a little bit more based on the odds. And it'll be interesting to see what we can do with spreads and totals and whatnot when it comes to that club. But many people are just looking at that, to your point, as Einarson and Holman. I believe Holman's at about plus 130 right now to win that group. The Zacharias pick's really interesting. And certainly I think if you're looking for a value bet, a little bit more of a long shot, it is what it is. I did get pretty chalky, though, with my two picks because I do think that Einarson will be that team that wins Group A and Jones. And both of these teams know how important it is to win the groups, Chris. We talked about that path going through. I mean, it's not just making it in. You want to put yourself in a good position when you get to those playoffs. And both of these teams have done it before, and I expect to be there when we finish the round robins.
Absolutely. And I'm also going to put a bet on Rachel Holman to win her group at plus 130. And Troy in the chat makes a good point. He said that Carly Burgess on the Zacharias team has 3 world championships. So I'd lose my passport to get back to Nova Scotia, where I lived for a long time, if I didn't point that out, because that Nova Scotia junior team, when she played there, was certainly phenomenal, and they dominated. So don't sleep on this junior team. I think they're like plus 2.5 in the opening game against Carrie Einarson. So that's not a bad bet to make. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Because we are going into our first draw picks, and I may have just stolen some of your thunder, did I?
Well, you know what? It is perfect timing. I think that there's real value with Zacharias. We talked a little bit about that rink when it comes to, the overall odds. But I think this is going to be a group of young people. I think there might actually be an advantage for be a younger team, be world junior champions, having gone through all of this off time. Mackenzie Zacharias is a student. She's probably been, thinking, breathing, curling at home, doing some offline assignments and trying to find an outdoor rink or something to throw stones with right now. But you think about what everyone else is dealing with. Rachel Holman, 7 months pregnant. I mean, Jen Jones has kids. I mean, more of these women, I think, are dealing with more of the problems that everyone has been dealing with. And, I think they're going to go in and be, kind of that looser team that will be ready to, take their shots at some of the people they've been wanting to get an opportunity for a long time. And I think they make a statement. I don't think I'm ballsy enough to bet them to win this matchup. When I saw getting 2.5 against Carrie Einarson in this first matchup, I think this is going to be close. I mean, I think Einarson's going to have to be really good to beat the Zacharias rink. And, Carrie Einarson is a veteran. She knows all you need to do is win. I mean, if they're tied and all she needs to do is draw in for 1 or say 2, that's fine. I think this will be a close game. So I was frankly surprised that this wasn't 1.5 as opposed to 2.5. I don't think we'll be seeing a number like this on Zacharias in 2 or 3 days. So minus 130, Zacharias with the spread against Carrie Einarson tonight is where I want to start it off.
All right, and moving into draw 2 for tomorrow, I don't think I had – well, I've got a parlay for my early bet. So let's go right into your draw 2 play. And you talked about a veteran team. You've got Suzanne Burt, used to be Suzanne Goody, not Gaudette for all my friends out in Prince Edward Island, who I miss ever so dearly. She's been to this event 1,000 times, and she's got a pretty favorable number in draw 2.
Yeah, you know what? It's funny. In Saskatchewan, is a team that at times on both the men's and women's side has had really, really strong teams. But, certainly when you look at the rankings and in the odds, this doesn't seem to be, a Saskatchewan team that many people are really expecting to, challenge amongst those top teams. I mean, as far as PEI goes, I mean, I think it goes to one of the things we're talking about, experience in this event, knowing what to expect going in despite the strange circumstances. And at a not really long number of minus 130, I found that was maybe the hardest draw to pick a game from. I tried to get one from each group of four, but I settled on Bert, as you said, been there over a dozen times, has some experience. I like them, and they know how important these early games are, especially against teams like Saskatchewan that, that head-to-head game may very well determine moving on or not. So PEI Bert at 130 in that draw too. And then we get back to the Zacharias ranking, draw number 3, Kris, as I think my first, an upset I like to feel. Now, Alberta's no joke. That's another team, I believe, plus 750 for the entire event. And thus a slight favorite over the Zacharias rink. But going into Saturday, after starting it off going up against Carrie Einerson, win or lose, I think the Zacharias rink comes in more comfortable in day number 2 and shows everybody why they are the world junior champions and why a lot of people around the world of women's curling expect them to barge in and be in the conversation amongst the best teams in the world in the next few years. So Zacharias plus 135 plus money over Alberta's Walker in draw number 3. And then we get to the match of, if you go right now to Coolbet and you cap all of the first 16 matches, 4 per draw, I think it's pretty easy to look at what the premier matchup is of the first Saturday, and that's in draw 4, and that's Jen Jones going up against Tracy Fleury's rink, skipped by Chelsea Carey. No strangers to each other, have played in different incarnations year after year after year. And listen, the Carey rink is going to be dangerous. The Fleury rink, they put Tracy Fleury in a position to win before. You look at their rankings in the world, in Canada. There's a reason why that number is what it is. And here's the thing with Chelsea Carey. She is a shot maker, and she is fearless. And I'm not sure what her attitude going into this event will be as to, is it just sort of, this is a great opportunity to play with this one team and moving on to next year, or trying to really reestablish herself as one of the premier skips in the game. Reestablish herself, remind everybody that she is. But coming back to it, this, I think, could very well be the game that determines the group. We're sort of already on Jen Jones. She knows the importance of this matchup and the early start. So Jones at minus 147 over Fleury at plus 110. But if you do have confidence in Chelsea Carey to get it done, that plus 110 number is pretty nice, considering some of the other spots for underdogs has been pretty tough to find.
Yeah, and I think we are gonna, if you have the courage to get in on the underdogs, I do think we'll see it. I do think we'll see big underdog upsets early on. I just don't know which one yet. So, all right, Husk, you've shown us your curling acumen here, and we've named the moniker of this next pick the Triple H parlay, the Hustlers Hurry Hard parlay. So, in the spirit of Triple H, you are the king. Behold the king of kings. What is the Triple H parlay going into the first few draws? All
right, we're going for Saturday games. So if you're catching this later on Friday, you've still got time to do it. We've got 3 matchups. We're going with Saskatchewan over Nunavut, minus 139. This is more of an odds play. And, we might get surprised by a team or two from, the territories and, some of the provinces that we don't speak about as much. But history has told you that, these teams are coming from very small pools. And I just think, we talked about Saskatchewan a little bit before as a spot, as an underdog against Bert. I think these are the games that, those sort of provinces absolutely need to win to put in. So I'm going to include Saskatchewan on the parlay. The game of the night we just talked about, Jones over Fleury at minus 147. And then we've added in Rachel Holman's Ontario rink over the wildcard team at Paterson. That originally was minus 333. It's chopped up a little bit. I think I just looked originally when I put this in at 276. I think it's 270 right now. But, if we can get that Saskatchewan win, focus in on the Jen Jones win, I think Holman in that first matchup is pretty safe. So we're not going to go anything too crazy. We're just going 3 draws on Saturday. Let's get these ones in, get a just about 3-1 winner and a nice start to the Scotties to pad the stacks a little bit as we get into the week.
All right, and my play is also going to be a parlay. I'm going to take Peterson, the aforementioned team. This is in draw 1, -1.5 over UConn. Now, I will say that we've gotten a ton of action on this game. So, I mean, all my sources tell me UConn is in a lot of trouble in this event, but we all know what happens when everybody pounds a favorite. So it'd be interesting to see how that one plays out. So that's leg 1 of my parlay. Then I've got Jen Jones over Quebec as a massive favorite, like -1250. And the same thing for Tracy Fleury / Chelsea Carey over Nunavut. And those 3 matches come out to a -109 parlay. It's a bit of a cowardly play, like my friend JD Bunkus would say, but I'm going to start it off a little bit cowardly and see where everyone sits before I get too bold with this event.
Nothing wrong with that. You don't have to be sheepish when you're cashing the ticket if it wins. You know, if your 1250 favorite somehow loses, that's when you feel stupid. But no, I do like that. I think I probably will get on that as well. I mean, hey, it's shaping up to be an amazing week, Kris. I mean, the fact that we not only have the futures bets, but draw by draw betting at Coolbet, I think is going to make it that much more fun. And you know, as we talked off the air, I think there's there's a market for this that is somewhat untapped. I mean, some of the things like we are talking football and betting golf that, you know, might be not the average curling fan or some of the people that are really into women's curling. I can tell you that my beloved mother this morning sent me a text at 6:20 saying, Andrew, I need to teach you you need to teach me how to get on Coolbet and bet on curling. I'm so excited for the event. So, listen, there's a lot of people that I think we might bring into the Coolbet family this weekend, watching what's happening at the Scotties. And I can tell you, I'm going to be going back and forth to the book throughout the weekend and the week, just looking at new odds coming up. And I just actually, you know, for players, Kris, I'll ask you, you know, right now we've got the Friday draws this afternoon and all 3 draws on Saturday. How do you think that will work with when we'll see odds for the following day? Midday, or will they finish up everything at the end of the night? Because, I mean, it's a pretty quick turnaround from the final draw. They go right back at it in the morning on most days.
If they do, and here's how I think it's gonna shake out. So we've got the first 4 draws up, but what I think you're gonna see after everyone plays their first game or so, odds for your next game won't come up until your previous game has happened. And that's what we did last year. And it's a little easier this year because there's 18 teams and just 4 sheets of ice. So I don't know how many times in the schedule, it might be 0, I have to double check, that a team actually plays on back-to-back draws. In a normal year, that happens all the time. You know, you play 2 out of the 3 draws during a day. With the increased number of teams this year, there's not as much back-to-back, so it gives the books a little bit of a chance to get set. But it also allows you to get the lines up earlier for a team's upcoming game. So that's what we're going to see there.
Well, I can tell you, if you're checking this out right now, you can give a follow to @LockshopBets on Twitter. Dustin Nielsen and I will be hitting this kind of with a midweek update on Tuesday and Friday. And I know we'll be back talking about the event all week long on all the Coolbet channels. So we get it. I did a little saying, Kris, is, you know, for curling bettors, the only thing better than a night at the Patch is that last rock in 10 to win you some scratch. Let's get it. Hurry hard. Come on.
I love it. And we'll wrap this up in a couple of minutes here. But you speak of the Patch. That was my last outing before COVID shut everything down. My last night out was at the Patch at the Briar in Kingston last year. And it's unbelievable that we're a year almost from that. But that was my last night out. Just 1,000 people in a tent with apparently a virus lurking. But nobody who was there, as far as I know, came down with it. So, that is going to be a huge what's the word I'm looking for? It's something that's going to be missing greatly from both of these events.
There's no doubt. And I mean, I've spent some time this week. We've just got bars back open like to 25% for a few hours. You can only go with who you live with. But, you know, I popped in and seen a few of my friends in the industry, and you're having one. And I said, like, what is it going to be like when it's green light and like it is full tilt for everyone. And I think about like when the Briar Patch is going for the next time and everyone's vaccinated and no one's freaking out about this afterwards. I mean, few places are more fun on planet Earth than the beer garden at the big curling events. And you know what, talking to some people, you know, just getting their thoughts on the event going into it and over the last couple of days before doing this. One of the things that, you know, certainly a lot of people around here where a curling community is so big is that, you know, often a night like tonight, you know, with Carrie Einerson playing or tomorrow night with Jen Jones playing, I mean, you would have the curling clubs here in Winnipeg full, you know, selling tons of beer, tons of food, and, you know, really big social events around getting together to watch. So, listen, I know people are going to be tuning in. I think the ratings will be huge. I think more people will be getting into it. And the fact that they aren't with other friends and maybe watching in these social venues, you know, I think might maybe get a few more people in on the odd 3-game parlay or something for a big slate of action on a Saturday.
Well, I think you're going to see it. I think now maybe I'm too close to it working in the industry, but to me, curling is the perfect television sport for a casual sports fan. It's slow enough that you can get a sense of what's happening. Mm-hmm. I think it's also a perfect sport to bet because it's the, you know, there's not a whole lot of moving parts. You throw the rock, the other guy throws the rock, or the other girl throws the rock in this case. And, you know, whoever comes closest to the middle wins. It's pretty simple. So I think it really lends itself to this betting. And because the schedule goes all day, it's like, you know, when we saw the NHL playoff bubble, as it were, you know, games happening all day. And you can really get engaged with the event and sit there from morning to night. And I got to think that's going to open up the doors for some sports betting for sure.
Well, hey, the coverage of this event has always been phenomenal. You know, we'll have every single draw on the tube from coast to coast. People aren't going out. They'll have a lot of time. And curling, as you mentioned, even for the people that are working at home or doing other things, you know, it's the sort of thing you can have on, follow it throughout, kind of get in there for the big shots, go back to doing what you're doing. So Canada needs the Scotties right now. Yeah. And it's coming at a great time. And, you know, for sports fans, even though we can't leave and see our friends and do everything, we've got this nightly incredible action in the Canadian division that I think is captivating hockey fans from coast to coast. And this curling community, from the calls that I've made and people that I've talked to that have been without their sport in any form all year long, cannot wait to get this going. And it's going to be great for everyone that loves curling in Canada. I have a feeling we'll have a number of new curling fans and maybe a few new curling bettors by the time we get in just through this weekend, Kris.
I think so too. So Saturday night, we're going to have the Battle of Alberta happening in Edmonton, and we're going to have the battle in Alberta when you've got Jen Jones against Chelsea Carey for your match of the day on Saturday night. We'll have plenty of coverage on the Scotties, on all the betting angles, all the lines. Follow us on Twitter. I am at Coolbet Kris. He is at Hustlerama. Thanks so much for tuning in, and we will see all of you as the week progresses.
Hurry hard!